Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Walters Wanderings Travel Podcast. I think we're up to episode 30 already, which is like 30 more than I thought we would ever have. But I really appreciate everyone watching on the YouTube channel and everyone following along on the podcast, wherever you get your podcast from. My name is Scott Walters from Go Away Often Travel. We'll be bringing in my guest, Anna Peck, in just a second. But before we do that, let's talk about my special for the day. And my special for the day comes to us from our friends at Norwegian Cruise Lines. Norwegian Cruise Lines is offering an extra amount of onboard credit. So if you book a cruise with me, exclusively at Go Away Often Travel, between now and April 30th, you will be getting $100 of onboard credit if you are in an inside interior cabin or an ocean view cabin. And if you're in a balcony cabin, a suite cabin, or a haven cabin, you will get $200 of onboard credit. This is on top of every other promotion that Norwegian Cruise Lines has to offer. So you can do your freestyle cruising to any number of places around the world. They are booking out into 2023. A small deposit holds your space, and I would highly suggest you get on board because pricing pressures will only make it get worse for your wallet. So again, $100 off onboard credit on interior and ocean view cabins, and $200 of onboard credit if you get a balcony or better on Norwegian Cruise Lines. All right, so we have with us today Anna Peck. She is a travel agent colleague of mine, but she has a very interesting backstory that happens before her travel agent years. Anna, are you with us?
I am here.
There you go. I can't tell because I only see an avatar for the YouTube, but that's okay. I just want to make sure you were there. So before Anna became a travel agent, she had a very long and distinguished career with the New York City Transit Authority, which I find very fascinating. And there's a lot of moving parts when it comes to trying to move people around a place as big and as vast and as diverse as New York City is. So we're going to talk about that, and then we'll discuss some of her travel agent things and other travel tidbits with her. So I guess we need to start at the beginning. How did you get involved with being a part of the New York City Transit system?
It's actually kind of interesting because I started back in 1985, and New York City had just come back from the terrible recession it had had. And during that recession, the Transit Authority had hired laid off cops and firemen. So when those folks all went back to original positions, a lot of positions opened. A friend of mine mentioned to me that they were hiring. I had no aspirations to start my life as a bus operator in New York City. Who does? Took the test. I passed. I said, oh, now I'm gainfully employed. It was 1985. I was 28 years old, my first real job, for lack of a better word. I had was still undecided as what I wanted to do when I grew up. So I took the job as a bus operator. I was one of the first 12 women to be hired by the Transit Authority. I was definitely a pioneer at the time. So that's basically how it got started. And long career after that with lots of adventures and moving parts, like you said, and a lot of learning and a lot of mentoring. And I was extremely lucky to have amazing mentors because they aspired me to be more. And not that there's anything wrong with being a bus operator in New York City. Believe me when I tell you they're the hardest working people on the planet and unsung heroes. But they figured I could do better as being a manager. So I went ahead and started my career path to the top.
So now, the first bus route you were on, where was it? And what were the people like when they saw a woman pulling open the door to let them in?
I'm glad you asked me that question. I started my career in the Manhattan, very, very luckily, because it was a little less frightening to me because I knew Manhattan. And I was first bus route I actually worked was the M11, which goes up and down 9th and 10th Avenue. And a lot of people would open the door. And of course, in those years, you actually had to put coins in a fare box. It wasn't Metro cards or anything like that. So you actually had to stop, put coins in the fare box and ask for a transfer. So a lot of people would, put their money in the fare box, ask for a transfer and walk away and then take 2 steps backwards and look at me and go, oh my God, you're a girl. And I am, so yeah, it was kind of interesting to watch that. Or they'd come up the stairs and they weren't quite sure, well, hi, that kind of stuff, which was kind of interesting. Though a few months later, I actually got bumped out of that particular depot I was working in. Bumping means as a unionized employee, they pick their work, and I was one of the super junior people, so I was in one of the most desired locations. So I got bumped out, and I ended up working up in the South Bronx. And now you have to remember, now it's 1986, and the South Bronx was still recovering from all of the the bad things that had happened up there, and
right, the Bronx was burning stuff. Yeah, all
yeah,
that.
the Bronx was burning, and it was still burning in those years. Thankfully, we've come back from that, and it was actually very interesting because now I am a 28-year-old white female with long blonde hair. Definitely an anomaly in the Bronx because they had never seen a white female bus operator, but I will tell you, the reactions were even more fun because these people were so gracious and so happy to see that the Transit Authority was actually diversifying and hiring people besides guys, and it was a fun time. It was an exciting time. People think, oh, you worked in the Bronx. Oh, my God. But I took the train to work every morning. I took the train home late at night. I never had any issues. It was so much fun to work up there because the Bronx is basically people living in neighborhoods. Manhattan's mostly businesses. The Bronx is a neighborhood. And you go to all these different great neighborhoods. They had, all the great food but the Bronx is extremely diversified. So it was actually a very fun experience.
No. My wife works at the other end of the Bronx near the Woodlawn Cemetery, and yeah, it's more like regular folks rather than going into Manhattan where you have to really dig in to find neighborhoods, and even still the people in those neighborhoods sometimes aren't quite as genuine as you find in the outer boroughs. So that's very true. So you drove a bus for how long before it was time to be kicked up the ladder into management?
I actually drove for about 3 years. I started my next path up was working as a road dispatcher. And a lot of people don't realize, but in those years, we actually stood in the street, on street corners with paper and paper pads in our hands and kept a schedule. Most people don't even think that New York City has a bus schedule, but they do because they think buses come and go when they want. But there actually is a bus schedule. So I actually stood on street corners in the rain, snow, sleet, and hail, all hours of the day and night, and I actually tallied buses on paper with a pencil.
So you were basically keeping tabs on if the buses were running on time, if there were delays, perhaps why, and all that for all the different statistical analysis that had to be taken, I suppose.
And it's actually because, again, everything was on paper. And it all had to be tallied up at the end of the evening, and we had to hand in paperwork. And because if stuff happens, we know this, traffic or whatever. And the idea here is to keep those buses running and keep it as least inconvenient for people, and make sure your bus operators are safe. That's always important. They were happy to, they made sure they waved as you as they walked, drove past you because they knew there was somebody there that had their back to if there was a problem, with what they might have had an unruly customer or so customer to question.
Now, for those who aren't oriented into the whole New York City thing, I think a lot of people can easily get a copy of the subway map for New York City from Google, and there are plentiful places you can find that. But buses are much more plentiful, and they do a lot more mileage than the subway system because the subway system is inherently going to be where it's 8 to 10 blocks between stops for the locals and more for expresses. So how many miles of bus routing, do you think there are in New York? I've not looked this up, so I don't even know the answer.
And I would tell you, I honestly don't know how many miles. I just know that New York City Transit in the 5 boroughs, including the very tip of Yonkers and very small part of Long Island, works over 55,000 trips a day. So that gives you an idea of what we're talking about, yeah. 55,000 trips. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot of buses moving around. That's a lot of logistics. So you get yourself out of the rain, sleet, snow, and hail, and what did you do next?
Well, it's funny you should say that because my next stop was a road superintendent. So I actually wasn't out of the rain, snow, sleet, and hail. Now I was a manager in charge of the dispatchers that I used to be one of. So I had a car. They gave me a car to drive around in, a very lovely GMC Jeep with, white with blue stripes with New York City Transit on the side. And my job now was to take care of the dispatchers and make sure they were taking care of business. But I also now had to respond to accidents and customer incidences and trains. Then it's funny you mentioned subways, because when something happens with the subways, the first thing they do is call buses, and we're the ones that we call them the rubber wheels to the rescue. We're the ones that have to show up to get these folks off the trains and move to their next stop. And it's very interesting to watch people that don't take buses and get off a subway, come out of the ground with their eyes blinking like they just woke up. It's kind of dark, and now you step up into the sunlight, and there are parts of the world that they've never stepped their foot into, getting onto a bus, which they don't ride, so we can get them to their next destination. So it was always interesting to watch, and a lot of them weren't happy when that happened. But it was just my job now was to make sure that the things were going smoothly. I had a small section to take care of. Of course, if there was an emergency, and there's always some.
I think we lost Anna for a second. Maybe she'll come back. This is all fascinating so far. Oh, you're back. Anna, you there? We're having a little technical difficulty. Let me fill in by saying that Anna's career went on for some time, and she actually was one of the main cogs that helped in 9/11, and I want to get to that story next. Well, there you are.
All right, Scott, I'm sorry I didn't hear your question. There was a little bit of interference. Can you try that again?
No, I was filling in because you had dropped out for a second. So you continue up the ladder, and obviously, not too many women in positions of authority, with the transit authority there. So I guess the next stop I want to make is the most poignant and perhaps emotional one for you, and that would be 9/11. I've read your 9/11 story, and it's really quite something. And I know you were part of a wide variety of people who were helpers on that day. What do you want to share with us about that?
I want to make sure you can hear me, because I keep coming up with. Can you hear
me?
You?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
I hear you.
Okay, wonderful. 9/11. Oh my gosh. When I was now what they call the general superintendent, I had gotten promoted, and I was now running the operational end of a bus depot, which was called Hudson Pier Depot, and we were located on the West Side Highway at 15th Street, about a mile and a half up from the World Trade Center. It's an old shipping pier. It's where the Titanic, where the Carpathia came into New York when the Titanic had its tragedy. So they converted into a bus depot back in the 1970s, and it stuck out into the Hudson River. So when I stood in the back of the depot, it was right there on the Hudson River. So you saw the World Trade Center, the Statue of Liberty, the Verrazano Bridge. You used to watch the cruise ships come in. It was just a pretty amazing spot in the world. And it's a gorgeous morning. I don't need to tell anybody what 9/11. It was a beautiful sunny Tuesday morning. And we had just gotten all our buses out the door, and I was heading back to my office to start the day. And one of my colleagues came up to me and told me that there was something had happened, and that there was and this is the exact words, there's a hole in the side of the World Trade Center. So you go, huh? So 2 steps later, I was out the door and looked down the street, and I went, oh my God. Yes, there is a hole in the building, and somebody said that a plane had hit it, and that must have been an accident. So, oh my gosh. So we knew at that time that because of what was going on, that they were going to need help. So we started rounding out anybody that could drive a bus, now got into a bus, because we knew that they were going to be looking for us they were going to be evacuating that building. We knew it. They were going to need us to get people downtown. We all know what happened next. So now the next aircraft, which was the United flight, came down the Hudson River. Very dark. They were dark gray aircraft in those years. Didn't know what it was. Buzzed us. Came lower and lower and lower and lower. And then we watched the second plane hit the second tower. And I kept on my skin standing up. about it because, yeah, it's one of those things that 20 years later is still affects me. And we all looked at each other and said, "Oh my God, let's get together. Let's find out what we can do." And of course, I had bus operators down in the area, so we would try to reach them to find out if everybody was okay. We managed to get a hold of most of them. We had them call in on their bus radios to let us know they were okay. And one building went down, the other building went down, and we still can't reach 4 or 5 of my bus operators. I had sent buses down there. We had sent down gear. We had sent down safety vests. We had sent down respirators. The subways department has a lot of heavy equipment, and they have, backhoes and dump trucks and stuff like that. So when you look at the early pictures of 9/11, you will see New York City Transit workers, one of the first responders down there to help. Let's get some. We were in rescue mode at that point. See if we can rescue as many people as we can. The traffic came to a stop on the West Side Highway. We were actually driving our buses downtown on the wrong side of the road to get the buses down there because we knew people were going to need to get rides uptown.
Sure.
And one of the things I remember most is that if you remember such a beautiful day that people started now walking because the Waterway Ferry, which goes to New Jersey, was just a few blocks up from us. So people that were heading to New Jersey started walking our way. And the later it got into the day, the more people walked up. And one of the most amazing things is everybody was covered head to toe in that awful dust. You didn't know whether they were male or female. All you saw was eyes. And the ladies were carrying their shoes, and there was baby strollers, and a lot of people came into our location. We were able to, we had bathroom facilities, so we let them come in, at least wash your face and wash your hands. And that particular day will stand out in my mind as the most surreal and emotional day ever. One of the things I always say is New York City Transit doesn't get any recognition in the city of New York, unfortunately. We have heroes, I understand that, but New York City Transit workers are heroes. They were heroes that day. And as a result of what's happened, the next 6 months, we were actually the only ones running down there. The subway service had stopped for about 4 months. So we were down there providing shuttle service on the subways, but we were also moving doctors and nurses down to the morgue. We were moving family members down. They had set up a triage center in one of the piers up where the cruise ships come out of. They had the family members meeting there. We'd pick them up and bring them down to Ground Zero. We were doing funerals. We were assigned cop and fireman funerals by the dozens daily. We were moving iron workers that worked overnight. They would come and they would park at the depot, and we would drive them downtown. So I had many of our bus operators that were doing this stuff that nobody ever knew about. And it's interesting when you talk to people and they go, well, I never realized that because the subways are not moving, who's moving the people? Well, buses. Right. Yeah.
That's just an incredible story, and I certainly understand, the raw, sensitive nature of that whole day. We all have our 9/11 stories, and mine pales in comparison to that, and the fact you had to continue doing stuff for some time afterwards, I'm sure, took a toll. There's no doubt. Now, you finished your career when with the New York City Transit?
Well, it's actually interesting you should say that because I actually retired in July of 2012, a few months before Hurricane Sandy hit. And I don't know if anybody knows this either, but if you remember Irene, Hurricane Irene had hit a couple of years before Sandy. She's kind of like the lost sister in there because people forget how badly we were affected by that one. Though it wasn't New York City. It was interior New York, parts of New Jersey and Long Island were destroyed. And we were called at that point because if you remember, the Long Island Railroad was not operating.
Right.
And the Metro North wasn't operating, along with New Jersey Transit through parts of New York where it butts along New Jersey, just above New York City. Mm-hmm. And at one time, Scott, we were doing bus service from Montauk, Long Island, to Port Jervis, New York, which is on the Pennsylvania border, which is 3.5 hours out of New York City, in addition to doing our regular bus service. And we did that for about 4 months. So
Yeah,
again, that's
I remember Irene caused a lot of havoc in
yes.
interior New York and Vermont and then Long Island. I do recall that storm, and in fact, it actually caused some havoc on the Jersey coast. But again, it pales in comparison to Sandy, which was just a few months after you retired. Did they call you in, or did they ask for your sage advice during Sandy, or what?
It's funny you should say that because when I retired in July, I was planning on moving from New York down to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and I had everything packed. And I planned on moving about, I guess, a week before she hit. And we knew it was coming. So the moving company had asked me to wait to move my stuff because they knew they were going to be using the trucks. Never thought about that, of course. And my phone, because I kept in contact with my colleagues, and they didn't ask me to return, which I was kind of glad because it would have been almost impossible for me to get in. But they were asking me for advice on what we had done with Irene and what would I do in this particular scenario. And I was happy that they knew they could count on me. They still count on me after all these years. I still get phone calls and texts and emails asking me about stuff, which is interesting because the folks that are in the higher positions now are all folks that I mentored through the years. So I'm happy to see that those young, enthusiastic folks that I actually worked with 10, 12, 15 years ago are now the folks in charge and are doing what I used to do.
Well, that is amazing, and that's a testament to the type of job you did over all those years for your New York City Transit. There's no doubt. So you transition, you move to Myrtle Beach, which is a really nice place to go, and lots of great golf, lots of great beach, a few amusement park type rides, and all that stuff. But you decide to have a career change because obviously you're not one that can keep still. So,
well, and you're right about that because I tried staying retired for about 6 months. I actually got invited to come back to New York to help start a double-decker tour bus company in New York. I did that in November. As a matter of fact, today was the first day back in 2014 that I started that job. Today is my anniversary there. So it's actually interesting that we're doing this today. Unfortunately, the double-decker tour bus company, which is called Open Tour New York, ended up going out of business because of everything that's happened lately, and Big Bus has taken over their routes. But I went up for about a year. We actually hired quite a few of my New York City Transit colleagues who were retired to come in and either drive a bus or dispatch like I used to do, or do maintenance work. So we actually had a lot of folks come back to help me do that. And we did that for about a year. I came back to Myrtle Beach and decided that I have to find something else to do. So I ended up going into a local dress barn to see if they were hiring, and I was working there. And while I was working there, I was looking at, because of course I'm an avid cruiser, as you well know. I was looking at cruises, and there was a big, nice cruise on the Carnival Freedom that was doing the repositioning cruise from Galveston to Fort Lauderdale, and I met Scott Asplund through a Facebook page, who mentioned about travel agencies, and he was going to have training on this cruise. Did I want to join? And sure, let me go find out what this is all about. And I signed on February the 5th, 2015. It's now 6 years later, and I haven't looked back, and it's been wonderful.
There you go. So now your particular niche is cruising. I mean, you'll certainly accept other bookings as they come in, as you're able to work on them. But the cruise industry obviously has taken a huge hit with the COVID. What do you see happening with the cruise industry, say the last half of 2021 and forward into 2022 and 2023?
Well, I will tell you that I'm very lucky that the folks that I have in my as my cruising family / friends / clients have chosen, for the most part, to go ahead and rebook their cruises. I cannot tell you how many hours I've spent moving money. And I had quite a few that kept booking from month to month to month, hoping that the travel agency business would, that the cruise industry would go back to normal. I'm not sure there's ever going to be a normal for a while. Right now, they're looking into November 2021, definitely 2022, and some into 2023. They're very positive. I'm very positive. I'm figuring somewhere along the line, we're going to figure out what we need to do or what we want to do. I believe they need to get a couple of ships in the water, set up some protocols, see if we can do this and make it work. And I see full steam ahead. I don't see it stopping. And people have mentioned this, and I'll mention it too, is I find that my bookings are very robust. People are anxious. They want to get out. Of course, you're my Disney expert, so anybody that needs help, I'll be calling you. But I've had a lot of requests now for Universal Studios. Is a big request. Cancun, Punta Cana. I was not an AI expert. I always rely on my folks to help me out. But right now, I'm answering calls for that too. So the wanderlust is there. People looking to get out, and of course, my cruise family can't wait to get going. So I'm remaining positive. I'm figuring somewhere along the line they're going to figure this all out, and we're going to get back in the water.
Well, it's sort of like a pressure cooker Instapot thing, I think. That's what I like to call it. Where things are the molecules are moving and bouncing around inside, and then all of a sudden it's just going to explode and be something really big.
Yes.
Now, what was your favorite cruise adventure you took?
Oh my gosh, let's see. So far, of course, my European seasons, both of them are both canceled, but my biggest and most amazing cruise so far was, I think, my Panama Canal Transit, which I did in January of 2018. We did a full transit from East Coast to West Coast. A lot of history there, and it was pretty amazing it's a long time going through those locks, but I was enthralled from the minute we started, and I pretty much had a front row seat most of the time. Been all over the place, but I will tell you that one sits as number one.
Well, that's one of my two bucket list trips is the Panama Canal cruise. The other one would be something to do with the Mediterranean, maybe a full transit, not the east side or the west side, but like the whole thing. Perhaps a back-to-back cruise scenario might play for me there.
Well, come with us. Yeah, come with us next year. We're booked on the Pride in 2022. So, and there's sailings from April to October. So hopefully you and your clients will hop on and we can travel together, because I don't think you and I have ever had that chance.
No, we missed each other. You and I were both on the same ship at the same time, the Carnival Horizon, when it was in New York City. But we missed each other because the ship was just too darn big.
Too darn big. A lot of people. Okay, and I knew you were there. Couldn't find you though. I
know. Like I said, sometimes the ships are just too darn big, and when you're on for a very short amount of time, it's very difficult to get the locators to locate. But no, like I say, I enjoy cruising. My family does too. My family we're big into the Disney Cruise Line, and we're looking forward to the 3 new ships they're going to be offering. And we did the last cruise we went on was to Alaska in August of 2019, and we definitely enjoyed that. There was no doubt about it. There was so much to see and do. And
Alaska is amazing. Yes, Alaska is unbelievable.
It really is, and we actually caught a great weather week, so we were lucky. It was the mid-60s and sunny, even in Ketchikan, which is like it blew the people in Ketchikan away that they had such a nice day.
Well, they're running around in shorts and flip-flops at 60 degrees. They think they think it's tropical.
They were, but there's a lot to offer. Cruises and all-inclusives offer great value. Places like Disney and Universal are not going to go away. They continue to grow. And obviously, other locations, they'll open up, like regular, land trips to Europe. And of course, you can discover the good old USA. So there's so much to recommend out there in travel. Well, listen, Anna, I really appreciate you hopping on board today and being with us on the Waltzers Wanderings Travel Podcast. A reminder to all the listeners and viewers out there that Norwegian Cruise Lines is offering extra onboard credit on top of any other offer you get from them. If you book with me at Go Away Often Travel exclusively, you can get $100 off your interior or ocean view cabin, $200 in onboard credit if you get a balcony cabin, a suite cabin, or a haven cabin. So I appreciate all of you being in tune to this edition of the Waltzers Wanderings Travel Podcast. We'll be back with more, and you can always check us out on your favorite podcast provider and, of course, my YouTube channel. Take care and have a great day.
Thank you, Scott.